June 7th, 1944. Peleliu Island, Western Pacific. The air is wet and heavy, thick with salt and rot, pressing against the lungs like a soaked blanket. It's just after dawn, and the jungle hasn't woken up yet, but the war has. Somewhere beyond the limestone ridges, artillery thumps like a distant heartbeat. Cicadas scream, rifles click. Men whisper prayers they don't remember learning. Second Lieutenant Jack Red Mallory, United States Marine Corps, crouches low behind a coral outcrop, his helmet tilted forward, sweat running into his eyes. He's 24 years old, Iowa-born, farm-raised, and hasn't slept more than 2 hours in the last 3 days. His platoon, 3rd Platoon, K Company, 5th Marines, has been ordered to probe a Japanese defensive pocket hidden in the jungle ahead. Mallory raises his fist. The men freeze. You can hear it before you see it. The rustle, the faint snap of a twig, too controlled to be an animal. Mallory leans forward, M1 Garand tight in his hands. The jungle smells like damp earth and cordite. Somewhere to his left, Private First Class Eddie Collins shifts his weight. Too loud. A sharp crack explodes through the trees. Mallory feels the world tilt. He hits the ground hard, face first into mud. For half a second, there's no sound at all, just a high, shrill ringing. Then pain slams into him like a hammer. Warmth floods the side of his face. He reaches up instinctively, fingers brushing something slick and wrong. Blood. Collins is shouting, someone screaming for a corpseman. Mallory rolls onto his back, blinking up at the pale slice of sky above the canopy. A Japanese Type 99 Arasaka round has clipped his head. Not a kill shot. Worse. The round has taken half of his left ear clean off. The pain is white-hot, blinding. The corpseman, pharmacist's mate 2nd Class Harold Wynne, skids in beside him, hands already red as he presses gauze to the wound. "Lieutenant, stay with me! Stay with me!" Mallory doesn't answer. His jaw is locked tight. His eyes are open, fixed, not on the sky, not on the blood, but on the jungle line where the shot came from. The Japanese sniper is still out there. Wynne tries to pull him back. "You're hit bad. We gotta—" Mallory grabs Wynne's wrist. His grip is iron. "No," he says quietly. Not a shout, not a plea, a statement. Another shot cracks. It snaps through leaves inches above Wynne's head. The sniper is adjusting, ranging. Mallory pushes himself upright, ignoring Wynne's protests, ignoring the blood soaking his collar. He tears the bandage away, stuffs it into his helmet, and slams the helmet back on. His ear is gone, but something else is waking up. Mallory had landed on Peleliu 6 days earlier. He'd already lost 12 men. He'd watched friends die screaming in heat so intense it cooked the water in their canteens. He'd followed orders. He'd held the line. He'd done everything right. And now the jungle had taken something personal. Mallory signals forward. The platoon hesitates. They see the blood. They see his face, half masked in red, eyes cold and focused in a way that makes grown men uneasy. "Move," Mallory says. They move. The sniper fires again. Too late. Mallory has already marked the flash. He breaks left, low and fast, boots barely touching the ground. He fires from the hip, 8 rounds rapid. The Garand barks like a hammer on steel. A body drops. No cheer, no pause. Mallory keeps moving. The jungle explodes around them now.
The sniper was bait. Japanese infantry rise from spider holes and camouflaged bunkers, screaming as they fire. Type 96 light machine guns chatter. Grenades thump into the dirt. Mallory doesn't slow. He moves like a man already dead. He charges the first position, throws a grenade into the firing slit, turns away as it detonates, then pivots and shoots a soldier stumbling out, uniform on fire. Another tries to bayonet him. Mallory smashes the rifle butt into the man's face, fires point blank. Time collapses. There is no fear, no pain, only motion. The platoon follows, half in disbelief, half in terror, as their wounded lieutenant tears into the Japanese line. He doesn't shout orders, he doesn't look back, he simply advances, and the men advance, because stopping feels more dangerous than following him. Within minutes, the jungle floor is littered with bodies. Mallory reloads, thumb bleeding from the clip. His hearing is distorted. Everything on his left side is a dull, underwater thud. Blood runs down his neck, into his shirt, but he doesn't wipe it away. He locks eyes with Collins, points forward again. There are more. And somewhere deeper in the jungle, Japanese officers are already shouting, scrambling to contain what they think is a full-scale assault. They are wrong. It is one man, and he is just getting started.
The jungle ahead tightens. Peleliu's interior isn't a forest, it's a maze. Razor-edged coral ridges slice up through the soil, honeycombed with caves and firing ports, invisible until they spit fire. The Japanese 14th Infantry Division has turned this ground into a killing box. They've rehearsed it. Every step forward is supposed to cost American lives. Mallory steps anyway. A burst of machine gun fire rips the leaves apart in front of him. He dives, rolls, comes up firing. His Garand bucks against his shoulder, the recoil familiar, grounding. A Japanese soldier collapses backward into a trench, helmet spinning away. Grenade. Mallory yanks the pin, counts, 1, 2, and throws. The explosion punches dirt into the air, followed by screams. He's already moving before the echoes fade. Behind him, the platoon struggles to keep up. Sergeant Tom Alvarez tries to shout commands, but the noise swallows his voice. He sees Mallory sprint straight at a coral ridge that should be suicide. "Lieutenant," Alvarez starts. Mallory doesn't hear him, or maybe he does and ignores it. He reaches the ridge and drops flat as bullets chip the stone inches above his head. He crawls sideways, presses himself against the rock, then pops up long enough to fire into a narrow slit. A Japanese gunner slumps forward, his weapon clattering uselessly. Mallory vaults the ridge. On the other side is a shallow ravine and an entire Japanese platoon scrambling into firing positions. For a heartbeat, both sides freeze. Then Mallory opens fire. He empties the rifle, the ping of the clip ejecting, sharp and final. He transitions without hesitation, draws his .45 Colt M1911, firing as he advances downhill. One soldier drops, another spins and falls, a third tries to run. Mallory shoots him in the back. The Japanese return fire wildly. Bullets snap past his head. One punches through his sleeve, grazing skin. He doesn't slow. He throws his last grenade into the ravine. The blast flattens bodies, lifts smoke and dirt, and Mallory charges straight through it, pistol barking, boots slipping on blood and loose coral. The platoon pours in behind him now, caught in the current. They fire, reload, throw grenades, but it's Mallory at the front, always Mallory, drawing fire like a magnet. Japanese officers scream orders, bugles blare, signals for counterattack. From the caves, more soldiers emerge.
Mallory switches back to his rifle, scooping ammo from a fallen Marine's bandolier without stopping. He fires, reloads, fires again. Each shot is deliberate, each movement efficient. There is no hesitation left in him, only momentum. Minutes blur together. At minute 10, Mallory storms a cave entrance alone, firing into the darkness until the echoes die. 2 bodies tumble out. He throws in a grenade for good measure. At minute 15, he bayonets a soldier who lunges from behind a tree, then rips the blade free and keeps moving. At minute 20, a machine gun opens up from his right, pinning the platoon. Mallory breaks toward it, zigzagging through fire, drops prone, crawls forward, then rises and empties a clip straight into the gun crew. The weapon falls silent. He is bleeding from 3 places now. His vision tunnels. The left side of his head feels numb and wrong, like it doesn't belong to him anymore. But every sense that matters is sharp. Time means nothing, only targets. Japanese resistance begins to crack. What was supposed to be a layered defense dissolves into chaos. Soldiers retreat deeper into the caves, abandoning positions. Some fight to the last, others hesitate, and hesitation gets them killed. Mallory doesn't count, but others do. Alvarez watches in disbelief as the jungle floor fills with enemy dead. He sees Mallory move from position to position, leaving silence behind him. He checks his watch once, twice, trying to anchor himself to reality. 30 minutes. The firing dwindles to isolated shots. Mallory stands in a clearing littered with bodies, chest heaving, rifle hanging loose in his hands. Smoke drifts upward through the canopy. The cicadas start again, tentative, confused. A final Japanese soldier bursts from a cave, charging with a bayonet and a scream that is half rage, half despair. Mallory fires once. The man drops. It is over. 36 minutes after the first shot took his ear, the jungle goes quiet. Alvarez approaches cautiously, expecting at any second for Mallory to collapse. The lieutenant turns toward him. His face is streaked with blood and grime, one side of his helmet soaked dark. "How many?" Mallory asked. Alvarez swallowed. He looked back at the bodies scattered through the ravine, the ridge, the caves. "Sir, 41, at least." Mallory nods once, as if confirming something he already knew. Then his knees buckled, and he finally goes down.
They catch him before his face hits the ground. Sergeant Alvarez and 2 Marines drag him back behind the coral ridge, hands slipping on blood. Mallory is conscious, but barely. His eyes flutter, unfocused now that the fight has drained out of him. The rage that carried him forward is gone, and what's left is a body that has been running on borrowed time. "Corpsman!" Alvarez shouts. Pharmacist's mate Wynne slides in again, skidding to his knees. One look at Mallory's head and he swears under his breath. The ear is gone completely now, the wound torn wider by sweat, movement, recoil. Wynne presses fresh gauze in place, wraps bandages tight. "You're a stubborn son of a—" Wynne mutters, more relief than anger in his voice. "You know that, Lieutenant?" Mallory manages a crooked half-smile. "Did we take the ridge?" Alvarez nods. "Yes, sir, and then some." Mallory exhales. His eyes close. For a moment, everyone freezes, afraid he's gone. Then his chest rises again, shallow but steady. Around them, the jungle feels unreal in its stillness. 36 minutes ago, this place was a furnace of noise and death. Now it's just smoke, bodies, and the distant rumble of artillery somewhere else on the island. Flies are already gathering. The Marines begin the grim work of clearing the caves, moving cautiously now, calling out, tossing grenades into dark holes that might still hide life. They find none. The Japanese line here has been annihilated. Word spreads fast. By mid-morning, officers from 2nd Battalion arrive to see the impossible for themselves.
They walked the ground in stunned silence, counting bodies, tracing the path Mallory carved through positions that intelligence had estimated would take hours and dozens of casualties to break. One captain stops Alvarez. "Your lieutenant do this?" Alvarez nods. "Yes, after they shot his ear off." The captain shakes his head slowly, as if the explanation only deepens the mystery. Mallory is evacuated to a makeshift aid station near the beach. As the stretcher jolts forward, the pain finally breaks through the fog. He groans, hands clenching, teeth grinding as Wynne injects morphine. "Easy. You're out of it now. You did enough." Mallory's eyes open briefly. He looks past Wynne, past the palm trees and smoke columns, back toward the jungle. "They won't be there tomorrow," he whispers. "No, they won't." At the aid station, surgeons work fast. They clean the wound, stitch what they can, shake their heads at what they can't. The ear is gone for good. Infection is a real risk in this heat, in this filth. But Mallory is young, strong, and too angry to die. By nightfall, he's stable. On the line, the Marines of K Company dig in on ground that was supposed to be a graveyard. They hold it through the night. No counterattack comes. The Japanese are reeling, pulling back, trying to understand what happened. In the days that follow, the story spreads across Peleliu like wildfire. The details change with every telling. Some say Mallory killed 50, others say 60. Some swear he charged a machine gun nest alone with nothing but a pistol and a knife. Others say he never stopped firing. What doesn't change is the core of it. A lieutenant was hit. They thought he was finished. He wasn't. Mallory wakes 2 days later, feverish but alive. His head is wrapped thick with bandages. When he reaches up and feels the flat, ruined side where his ear should be, his hand stops. He doesn't curse. He doesn't ask why. He just lies there, staring at the canvas ceiling, listening to the war continue without him. A colonel visits that afternoon. He stands stiffly at the foot of the cot, clears his throat. "Second Lieutenant Mallory, you're going to be recommended for the Navy Cross." Mallory turns his head slightly, one good ear catching the words. "For what, sir?" The colonel hesitates. "For what you did out there." Mallory closes his eyes again. "I just didn't want them shooting my men." The colonel nods, suddenly uncomfortable. He's seen bravery. He's seen sacrifice. What he saw in the jungle feels like something else entirely. As he leaves, Wynne leans in close. "You're a legend already, you know that." Mallory exhales slowly. "Legends don't bleed like this." Wynne smiles sadly. "Yeah, they do." Outside, the battle for Peleliu grinds on, one of the bloodiest fights in the Pacific. Thousands will die before it ends. But for the men of K Company, the ground Mallory took in 36 minutes becomes a reference point. They call it Red's Cut, and none of them ever cross it without remembering what it cost.
The Japanese survivors remember it too. In a limestone cave less than 300 yards from Red's Cut, Lieutenant Hiroshi Nakamura, Imperial Japanese Army, sits in darkness with what remains of his unit. He has 17 men left out of an original 48. Most are wounded. All are shaken. Nakamura has fought in China. He has seen ambushes, night raids, banzai charges that ended in rivers of blood. What happened this morning does not fit into any of those categories. It felt wrong, unnatural. From Nakamura's position, the American attack made no sense. There was no preparatory bombardment, no flanking maneuver, no pause to regroup, just a sudden, violent pressure straight through the center, like a blade driven forward without regard for its own edge. And at the front of it was one man. Nakamura saw him clearly through his field glasses at first, an American officer, helmet dark with blood, moving faster than seemed possible under fire.
He should have gone down within seconds. Any trained defense would have cut him apart. Instead, the officer kept coming. Nakamura watched machine gun crews die before they could traverse their barrels. He saw riflemen freeze, their discipline breaking, as the officer appeared again and again through smoke and trees, firing, throwing grenades, never stopping. The Americans behind him moved as if pulled by gravity. Men began shouting that the officer could not be killed. Someone screamed that he was already dead. Nakamura slapped that man hard, trying to restore order, but the damage was done. Fear spread faster than commands. When the officer reached the ravine, Nakamura ordered a counterattack, bayonets, grenades, everything they had. It collapsed in seconds. By the time Nakamura ordered the retreat into the caves, more than 40 of his men were gone. The ground outside was lost, and worse, their confidence with it. Now, in the cave, the survivors whisper. They talk about the American who did not fall, about how he bled and kept advancing, about how bullets seemed to miss him by inches again and again. In a culture that understands courage and death intimately, this unsettles them more than any defeat. Nakamura writes in his field notebook that night, by the light of a single candle. The enemy officer fought without fear. He did not act as a man who expected to live. For Nakamura, the conclusion is simple. The Americans are not winning because they are stronger. They are winning because they are willing to lose everything, including themselves, to keep moving forward. Back at the Marine Aid Station, Mallory knows nothing of this. He drifts in and out of sleep, plagued by flashes of sound and motion, the crack of rifle fire, the weight of the Garand in his hands, the moment of impact when the bullet tore away his ear. Each time he wakes, his heart is racing, fingers twitching as if searching for a trigger. Wynne notices. "Still fighting them, huh?" the corpsman says quietly. Mallory swallows. His throat is dry. Did anyone get through?" Wynne shakes his head. "No, you broke them." Mallory stares at the canvas wall. He doesn't feel pride. He feels distance, as if the man who ran through that jungle was someone else entirely, someone who borrowed his body for half an hour and then vanished. 2 weeks later, against medical advice, Mallory returns to his unit. He is thinner now, paler. His head is shaved around the wound, the missing ear impossible to ignore. The men fall silent when he walks up. Some smile, some look away. A few can't quite meet his eyes. Alvarez steps forward and salutes. "Good to have you back, sir." Mallory nods. "Good to be back." The fighting resumes almost immediately. Peleliu does not care about heroes. It chews men up indiscriminately, day after day, until the island itself seems soaked with exhaustion. Mallory fights differently now. He is still aggressive, still decisive, but he no longer charges blindly into fire. Something in him has shifted. The rage that carried him through Red's Cut has burned itself out, leaving behind a colder, sharper focus. He listens more, he plans more, but when the shooting starts, when the lines threaten to break, the men still glance toward him instinctively, and when Mallory moves forward, they follow, because they remember what happens when he does. Weeks later, as Peleliu finally grinds towards its bloody end, a rumor circulates among Japanese holdouts. They warn each other in whispers about a one-eared American officer who leads attacks without hesitation, who does not retreat, who does not seem to feel pain. Some say he cannot be killed. Mallory hears none of this. He is too busy surviving.
By October 1944, Peleliu is officially declared secured. No one on the island believes that word means anything. The ground still reeks of death. Bodies lie where they fell weeks earlier, bloated and blackened by the sun. The coral dust clings to skin and lungs.
Men cough blood and call it a cold. Nights are quieter now, but the silence is deceptive, broken by the crack of a lone rifle, a sudden scream from a booby trap, a grenade tossed from a cave everyone thought was empty. This is where the war settles in. Mallory sits on an ammo crate near the edge of Red's cut, cleaning his rifle. His movements are slower than they used to be, not weak, measured. His missing ear is fully healed now, a hard scar pulling the skin tight. He hears the world unevenly, sounds arriving late, distorted, but he's learned to compensate. Alvarez drops beside him and lights a cigarette, offering one. Mallory shakes his head. "Never figured you for quittin'," Alvarez says. Mallory shrugs. "Didn't quit, just don't want it." They sit in silence for a while, watching the men move through camp. Replacements laugh too loudly. Veterans don't laugh at all. Finally, Alvarez speaks. "They're still talking about that day." Mallory keeps his eyes on the rifle. "They shouldn't." "Can't help it. You did something. People don't forget." Mallory slides the bolt home and looks up. "I don't want them trying to do it again." Alvarez nods. That's the unspoken fear. Young Marines trying to imitate what they saw, thinking fury alone can beat machine guns. Mallory has already shut that down, hard, more than once. "You don't win by being angry," he tells them. "You win by staying alive." But in his dreams, anger still has a face. He wakes some nights with his heart pounding, the phantom sensation of blood running down his neck. In the dark, he sometimes reaches for an ear that isn't there, and for a moment he's back in the jungle, hearing nothing but gunfire and his own breath. When the Navy Cross is formally presented in a brief ceremony near the beach, Mallory stands stiffly, uncomfortable with the attention. The citation is read aloud, words like extraordinary heroism and conspicuous gallantry, carried away by the wind. He barely listens. He keeps seeing the ravine, the caves, the faces of men who were alive 1 second and gone the next. Afterward, a young lieutenant approaches him, eyes bright, voice eager. "Sir, how did you—" Mallory cuts him off gently. "Don't ask that." The lieutenant blinks. "I just meant—" "There's no trick," says Mallory quietly. "There's no switch you flip. If you go looking for it, it'll get you killed." The young man nods, chastened, and walks away. Mallory watches him go, hoping the lesson sticks. Weeks later, he is rotated off the island. Peleliu fades behind him, shrinking into the Pacific haze. He feels nothing when it disappears, no relief, no triumph, just a dull sense of unfinished business he can't name. On the transport ship, a chaplain sits beside him one evening, hands folded. "Do you ever think about why you lived?" the chaplain asked. Mallory considers the question for a long time. "No," he finally says. "I think about why they didn't." The chaplain nods, understanding more than he says. Back in the States, months later, Mallory is treated like a curiosity. Reporters want quotes, officers want speeches. Someone suggests he pose for photographs, show the scar. He refuses all of it. He returns to Iowa thinner than he left, quieter. The farm looks the same. The fields don't care about Peleliu. Corn grows, seasons change, but the war follows him home. Fireworks sound like rifle cracks. Crowded rooms make his skin crawl. When people praise him, something tightens in his chest, not pride, but discomfort, like he's wearing a uniform that no longer fits. At night, he sometimes dreams of Red's cut, not of killing, of running, of never stopping, and of the moment it finally ended, when the jungle went quiet and he was left alone with what he had done.
Years pass. The war ends the way wars always do for the men who survive. Not with parades, but with distance. Distance from the noise. Distance from the fear. distance from the people who can never fully understand what those minutes in the jungle felt like. Jack Red Mallory rarely speaks about Peleliu. When he does, it's never the story people want. At the VFW Hall in Des Moines, a man once asks him outright, beer in hand, voice too loud, "So how many'd you really kill?" Mallory doesn't get angry. He doesn't even look offended. He just stands up, puts on his coat, and leaves. Those who know him learn not to push. The scar on the side of his head never fades. Children stare at it sometimes. Adults try not to. Mallory doesn't hide it, but he doesn't explain it either. When asked about the missing ear, he usually says, "Lost it overseas," and changes the subject. What he carries is heavier than the wound. On quiet afternoons working the farm, the memories creep in without warning. The smell of hot metal when the tractor backfires. The way sunlight filters through corn leaves, suddenly too much like jungle canopy. He'll stop what he's doing and stand still until the feeling passes. He marries, has children, learns how to laugh again, but carefully, like someone testing ice before stepping onto it. His wife notices that he always sits facing the door in restaurants, that he wakes instantly at unfamiliar sounds. She doesn't ask him to stop. She understands some things don't leave. Once, years later, a letter arrives from the Department of the Navy. Inside is a transcript of a Japanese after-action report recovered after the war, translated and attached to his own service record. A historian thought he might want to see it. Mallory reads it alone at the kitchen table. It describes an American officer with a blood-covered helmet who broke a defensive line in minutes. It speaks of fear spreading among trained soldiers, of men hesitating, then dying because of that hesitation. Mallory folds the paper carefully and puts it away. He feels no pride. He feels confirmation. What happened that day was not magic. It was not destiny. It was a moment where pain, exhaustion, responsibility, and instinct collided, and there was no room left for fear. He understands now what he couldn't then. That kind of moment only comes once, and if you survive it, you spend the rest of your life making sure it never happens again. In 1972, a young Marine officer visits him, working on a regimental history. He brings maps, casualty figures, timelines. He wants Mallory to walk him through Red's Cut. Mallory studies the map for a long time. "You're missing something," he finally says. The officer leans forward. "Sir?" Mallory taps the paper. "You've drawn it like a battlefield." It wasn't. It was a tunnel. Once I stepped into it, there was only forward. The officer writes that down, though he doesn't fully understand it yet. Before he leaves, he asks one last question. "If you had to do it again?" Mallory stops him with a raised hand. "I wouldn't," he says firmly. "Not because it didn't work, because it did." The officer nods slowly, realizing the answer is heavier than it sounds. As Mallory grows older, the legend grows without him. His name appears in books, footnotes, documentaries. The numbers get bigger, the language gets grander, but the man himself remains quiet. On the anniversary of June 7th, he sometimes walks alone at dusk, listening to the wind move through the fields. He touches the scar once, not in anger, not in sorrow, just acknowledgement. 36 minutes defined him, but they did not own him.
June 7th, years later. The date still exists, whether anyone remembers it or not. Jack Red Mallory sits on the porch of his farmhouse as the sun sinks low over the fields. His hands are older now, knuckles thick, movements slower but steady. The wind moves through the corn the same way it once moved through jungle leaves, only now there is no gunfire underneath it. He listens. With one ear, the world is always slightly off balance. Sounds arrive unevenly, but he's learned something from that. You don't need to hear everything to understand what matters. Inside the house, a radio murmurs news from a world that has moved on. Wars with different names. Young men with clean faces going places they don't yet understand. Mallory doesn't comment. When he is asked, rarely, carefully, what those 36 minutes meant, he never talks about killing. He talks about responsibility, about knowing that if he stopped, others would die, about how fear shrinks when there is no alternative left. That is the part people don't expect. They want fury, they want vengeance, they want the moment where a man becomes something more than human. Mallory knows better. He didn't become more than human that day. He became only human, stripped down to instinct, duty, and motion, with no room for anything else. That is why it ended, because nothing like that can last. When he finally passes, quietly, without ceremony, there is no headline, no breaking news, just a folded flag, a scarred helmet placed gently beside it, and a handful of men who stand a little straighter than usual. Years later, a Marine instructor tells a class about Peleliu. He doesn't dramatize it. He simply says, "One officer was wounded. He stayed on his feet. His men followed. The position was taken." A recruit raises his hand. "Sir, how?" The instructor pauses. "Because sometimes," he says, "the fight doesn't give you time to be afraid." And somewhere in the long echo of that lesson, 36 minutes continue to ripple forward, not as a myth, not as a body count, but as a reminder of what happens when a man refuses to stop moving.